The Catholic Church in the Philippines declares war on birth control. Landmark legislation is making sex education and contraception more widely available. But church leaders are promising to have the law thrown out. They say they must obey God, not man. Hello there, I'm Shuli Ghosh. Welcome to Inside Story. It's a controversial issue, pitting the Philippine government against the powerful Catholic Church. For more than 10 years, politicians have been lobbied and even intimidated into blocking bills advocating birth control. Now that's all changing. The reproductive health law requires government health centres to hand out free condoms and birth control pills, and sex education to be taught in schools. Supporters say it was necessary to stem the growth in population, to bring down maternal death rates, to help poor women avoid getting pregnant, and to slow the spread of sexually transmitted diseases. But some church leaders are urging people not to use contraceptives, even if they're free. They say they have a moral responsibility to have the law overturned. And they're warning politicians who disagree with them they'll be targeted in the next election in May. Let me introduce today's guests to you. In Manila, Congresswoman Mitos Magsaysay. She's a member of the Philippines' lower house of parliament, and she's against the new law. From Jerusalem, Gerard O'Connell, a journalist specialising in Catholic affairs. He was formerly the Vatican correspondent for the Union of Catholic Asian News. And also in Manila, Elizabeth Angsioco, National Chair of the NGO, the Democratic Socialist Women of the Philippines, and in support of the new legislation. Welcome to all three of my guests. It's great to have you on the programme. Mitos, let me start with you, because the majority of lawmakers supported this bill, but not you. Why not?
Well, for me, Shuli, you don't really have to pass the RH bill, because in the last Congress, we already passed another law, which is called the Magna Carta for Women, wherein maternal health care and child care has already been placed in the law under Section 17 and 20 of the Magna Carta for Women. So when you talk about prenatal and postnatal care for all women, it's already there. If you talk about access to family planning information, it's there. Access to family planning methods, as long as it's ethically and medically safe, it's there. Access to sex education, it's there. Right to space children, providing doctors, nurses, midwives, and birthing facilities nationwide, it's already there.
But clearly,
preventive.
Clearly, the majority of lawmakers, including your president, didn't feel that that was enough, and clearly they felt there needed to be more measures to deal with the huge number of unwanted pregnancies that there are in the Philippines, the extremely high rate of teenage pregnancies, and the number of unsafe abortions being carried out.
Actually, you know, in the IRR for the Magna Carta for Women, it already tells you how the government, different government agencies will address this problem. And all government has to do is implement it. But the only reason why they wanted to pass this measure was because we didn't provide any funding provisions for the procurement of condoms and contraceptives in that law. That's why they adamantly tried to push for the RH bill to be passed into law, so that we can so that Congress can provide the necessary funding for the procurement of condoms and contraceptives. And when we asked the pro-RH legislators, how much money do you think should we put for condoms and contraceptives? And the answer was 3 billion pesos a year, which we found very exorbitant and very unrealistic, and it's unconscionable, because considering some of the government agencies in the Philippines don't even have $1 billion for their budget in yearly, and here we are trying to give them 3 billion just to buy condoms and contraceptives.
So your problem with the legislation is the finances of it, the amount of funding it's going to take.
Yes, that's one of the main reasons. And, you know, for other legislators, it's also the fact that we cannot separate who we are, and what our faith is once we become legislators, because we're mainly influenced by our religion, considering that in the Philippines, as you said in your report, there are about 70 million Catholics in the Philippines. And, you know, our moral values and our religious faith is the one that also is the one influencing us to make these decisions. Because when we go to the grassroots level and we ask them what they feel would be more helpful to them, especially the poor people. I ask them, what would you prefer? Me giving you a 5,000 peso worth of scholarship for skills training and tertiary education scholarship, or should I just give you 5,000 worth of condoms? Which do you think will be the better solution to get you out of poverty? And most of them answered me they would rather have an education, because
Beth,
that will be the ticket out of poverty.
Okay,
that makes them
let me
productive.
put those points to one of our other guests. Beth, how do you answer those points? First of all, too much money being spent on this, and second of all, it goes against the identity of the Philippines people.
Well, for one, I would like to say that there's nothing more that I'd like to happen but to believe in what Representative Magsaysay was saying, that the reproductive health law is not necessary anymore. Because if it's not necessary, then all our efforts for 14 years of working for the passage, we need not do that. But that's not the reality. One, I'd like to say that the Magna Carta of Women, as the law says, it is for women. While the reproductive health law, it's going to benefit, of course, first and foremost women, but it's really for everybody. It's even for men, it's for young people, even for babies. So in that case alone, I think the allegation that the reproductive health law is unnecessary cannot be given much credence. Secondly, because it's a Magna Carta, it contains all the rights of women, and that is good. But we need a law that will substantiate what's in the Magna Carta. I was also involved in the advocacy for the Magna Carta of Women, and definitely we know that it's going to be a first step towards the passage of a more detailed law that will actually focus on the reproductive health needs of women, of children, of young people, and even of men. I'd like to say also that while it's true that the reproductive health law will actually make available family planning services, contraceptives, even reproductive health education for our young people, the law is not just that. There's a lot more services in the law that needs to be focused on so that the RH-related problems of our people will be addressed. Let me be more specific. One, the reproductive health law, because it's already a law, will institutionalize all the reproductive health services that we need. Unlike before, when we had to depend on the personal convictions, even the religious convictions of our president, of our Secretary of Health, now we no longer need to do that, because for as long as the law is there, then services and programs need be implemented.
Okay, it is. Well, can I just leave, because I do want to address this question of religious identity, because it has caused a lot of controversy in the Philippines, which of course is a very, very Catholic country. Gerald, I mean, the church. The church leaders have been passionate advocates against this legislation. Many, in fact, have criticised President Benigno Aquino for signing it.
Well, it's always a very difficult question when you're in government and when you're in church. The legislators feel that they tried to do what they think in their best conscience is good for their people. The church is looking at the ethical aspects of some of the proposals. I think it should be very clear from the beginning that the Catholic Church wants good health care for women, for men, for children, and in fact it is providing that in the Philippines. I've seen it myself and in many parts of the world. It's also very careful that the cure or what is being put on offer may not be detrimental to life. One of the big issues that has been in many reproductive health bills has been the type of contraceptive that is being offered. In some countries, the problem is that some of the contraceptives produce abortion. We know that family planning, when it is organized by government or directed by government, can sometimes have deadly results. we see in, for example, in China, you've had a lot of infanticide, you've had widespread abortion, and now the country has got a disproportionate number of men to women because the young baby child girl was aborted.
But Gerald, just on this question of population numbers, in the Philippines there is a huge number of abortions that are taking place. Whatever the debate is on contraceptives, it's happening now. This is what the government has to deal with.
I don't personally have the figures, so I wouldn't comment on this. But
I have got the figures, and
the church by its own
100,000 unsafe abortions every year.
Yes. So surely that's not a good situation. Nobody denies that. But the Catholic Church is against abortion as such. And this is one of the problems that the bishops, I think, are trying to get across, because it defends life from conception to natural death. And it says that if a child, if a woman, if a girl is pregnant, they should be assisted, if they don't want to have the child, to be able to adopt the child. Some people don't agree with this, but I'm saying this is what the Catholic Church teaches. It does not believe in abortion. And you see this battle, there's a big battle going on in many countries in the United States. I see it in the country where I was born, in Ireland. There's a big problem now going on in the Parliament about the possibility of of having abortion in very limited situation. The Catholic Church has, one of its fundamental teachings is the protection of life from the beginning to the end. And this, of course, is one of the problems, not the only one, that it's concerned about when you get into the question of artificial means of birth control.
Okay,
the Catholic Church, in terms of population, is not saying that a person has to have the maximum number of kids. Absolutely not. It has.
Yeah, but it's saying practice natural contraception, which in any population has been shown not to work.
Well, of course, there is one thing is the teaching, and the second thing is how people follow the teaching. I mean, if you take a country like Italy, you have almost a negative birth rate. Now, Italy is predominantly Catholic country, so it is very difficult to believe that this happens by accident. It's very difficult to believe that it happens by following natural means.
Beth, what's your reaction to this? That there are different ways of doing things here.
May I jump in at this point?
Go on, Beth.
May I jump in at this point?
Yes, please do.
Yeah, I'd like to say that if people read the reproductive health law that's been passed, one will realize that the law has been very respecting of the constitutional provision against abortions. Because in the law it has been repeatedly said there that there's not going to be contraceptives that will result in abortion that will be made available. And secondly, I'd like to, about this protection of life, I'd like just to say that the Philippine Constitution also has a very strong provision that says that the protection of life of the unborn equal protection of life of the unborn and of the mother. Let's not forget about the mother. The country has one of the highest maternal mortality rates in the region, if not the highest. About 14 to 15 women are dying daily because of complications related with pregnancy and childbirth. This certainly has to be addressed. And internationally, scientifically, contraceptives, family planning has been known to reduce the number of maternal deaths by at least 32%. That's one thing. Secondly, if there is no unwanted or unplanned pregnancies, certainly abortions will be prevented. And this is what the reproductive health law wants to do. In fact, I've always been saying that those who are against abortion should actually support the implementation of the reproductive health law, because this is going to reduce the number of abortions that all of us hate. And lastly, in terms of, I think the point about demographic winter has been brought out, and I'd like to point out that our professors in the University of the Philippines College of Economics have already explained that even with the gradual reduction of total fertility rate in the country, it will take another 100 years before population stops growing. And by that time, we will already be 240 million Filipinos. I mean, certainly, these are things that should be looked into, but the merits of the reproductive health law cannot be questioned.
Okay, let's just have a look a little closer at the maternal mortality statistics that you were talking about, because that is another area of concern in the Philippines, the number of women dying while giving birth. The latest family health survey estimated the maternal mortality rate increased by 36% in 2011 to 221 per 100,000 live births. Well, that's up from 162 just 2 years earlier, and it is way short of the Millennium Development Goal target of 52 per 100,000 births by 2015. Mitos, Elizabeth is making the point that...
May I jump in, yeah?
Yeah, I was going to say, you know, how do you respond to those points that this new law is going to bring down the number of maternal mortality deaths and the number of abortions?
In the first place, you don't need a reproductive health bill just to take care of the maternal needs of a woman. First of all, it is the right of every Filipino, and it's the obligation of government to make sure that proper health care is given whether to a man or to a woman. So all we need to do is just give the necessary funding to the Department of Health by providing them the necessary funds in Congress to be given to the Department of Health so that they be able to make birthing facilities, provide salaries for doctors, nurses, and midwives nationwide. You don't need an RH law just to ensure that no mother will die daily, because even without the RH law, it's the obligation of government to take care of the health maternal needs of a mother and a husband and a child. So even with the present existing, when we had no RH law, it was government's responsibility to provide all these things to the Filipino people. And secondly, with regards to abortion, they really, when we were doing the deliberations in the House of Representatives, they could not even give us a categorical answer when we considered the rights of the unborn. Because as far as some of the definitions are concerned, we considered somebody as a human being upon conception. And conception was not clearly defined. They didn't want to define when conception happened. Was it when the egg and sperm were fertilized, or was it on another issue? That's why they didn't want to come up with that debate, because if in case they did, a lot of contraceptives will not pass in Philippine laws, because some of the contraceptives that were trying to be introduced to the Philippines are known abortifacients. And even if you look at the description of the contraceptive, it's really written in the material that it is an abortifacient.
I mean, this is clearly a very, very emotive subject, and not surprisingly, we've had a huge reaction to this subject on our Facebook page, largely in favour of the new legislation, it has to be said. Take a look at some of these reactions. Peter Polino says, I can't agree with killing unborn children, but I can see no evil in not creating them if that is you and your spouse's wish. Levi Madagmit says, I respect the Catholic Church, but they can't feed everyone. Margaret Vahis Hardy says, it's okay if the Vatican comes forward and helps these people raise all these children they bring into the world, then they can call the shots. If not, butt out of their lives. And Leslie Ann Burton says, does the Catholic Church ever think about the logical conclusion of unfettered procreation? Gerald, we know that the Church is going to challenge this ruling, isn't it? What are they going to do, and could they be successful?
Well, I mean, the Philippines is a democracy, and so it has to be challenged within the limits of the democracy. I think there's another question that I'd like just to move back to, because I suspect, I don't have the details, but I suspect that many of the the maternal deaths and that have happened are in a certain socioeconomic class. I mean, one cannot ignore the fact that there is extreme poverty in parts of the Philippines, that there's a tremendous gap between the rich and poor. And I think it's fundamental that when you see the smaller families, very often you see the smaller families are in the higher income groups, and the larger families are in those who...
So in that case, doesn't population control mean that there's more chance of getting out of this cycle of poverty?
Well, is that the answer, to reduce the number of people to sit at table, or to provide more food on the table?
Well, I think it's particularly difficult when you look at families who've got upwards of 10, 11, 12 children and who are living below the poverty line. Surely it's easier for them to get out of that vicious cycle if they don't keep having unwanted pregnancies every year.
Well, without doubt. I mean, I live in Rome normally, and I see that we've got one of the largest immigrant communities are Filipino women, and certainly all of them practically have very small families, 2, 3 children. But of course the problem is then they have to send the children back home, many of them, because they can't work and keep the children. This is another problem. But I think there is a question also that must not be missed, is the addressing of poverty within the Philippines itself is a very fundamental issue. And it's not, I don't wish to dodge the question that you're raising, that the smaller families therefore is one way of doing it. But I think there is no doubt that what the Catholic Church is trying to do is to ensure that life is protected, the life of the mother as well as the life of the child, unborn child.
Okay. We're going to have to leave it there, but I mean, clearly there are lots and lots of questions and lots of debate to be had on this subject, and I'm sure those arguments will continue. But I'm going to have to say thank you to all my guests today. I do appreciate your time. Mitos Magsaysay, Gerard O'Connell and Elizabeth Angsioco.
Thank you.
So that's it for this edition of Inside Story. Don't forget you can join the discussion by tweeting us at AJ Inside Story or emailing us at insidestory@aljazeera.net. From all the team here, bye for now.